So if you take a handful of, rotten mold-covered broad beans, and they've been sitting outside in the blazing sun for like 3 years.
Oh, yeah. 3 whole years.
Right. And then you throw them directly into shimmering, smoking hot oil. I mean, by all conventional logic, you shouldn't get a culinary masterpiece.
No, you really shouldn't.
You should get a massive health code violation. But instead, that exact process creates the absolute fiery soul of authentic Sichuan cuisine. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's the ultimate paradox of flavor, isn't it? I mean, controlled rot turning into absolute gold.
It really is, exactly. And if you are listening to this right now, you're probably someone who, loves to learn. You want the shortcut to mastering a complex topic.
But you're completely exhausted by the crushing weight of information overload. We see you.
Yeah, we totally see you. Because you look at a complex restaurant menu or you watch a master chef working a wok with 15 different sauces, and it just feels like an impossible mountain to climb.
Oh, absolutely. You think, I could never replicate that in my own kitchen.
Right. But that mountain is actually a staircase. Today, we are handing you the keys to the kingdom. We're not just going to rattle off a grocery list of obscure ingredients.
No, definitely not a grocery list.
We are deconstructing the architectural blueprint of the Chinese pantry. We're looking at how a handful of roots, some of those funky fermented beans we just mentioned, and a few very specific liquids transform totally raw, basic ingredients.
They transform them into world-renowned, deeply complex regional cuisines.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about culinary alchemy here.
Think of this deep dive as a journey through the exact life cycle of a dish. Like, we are going to start with the raw, explosive beginnings in a very hot wok.
The loud part.
Yeah, the loud, hot part. Then, because you can't just have an explosion, we'll build upward. We'll wade into the liquid foundations that cool the pan and give a dish its boundaries.
Right, the liquids.
And from there, we'll sink deep into the world of fermented umami, that undeniable, lingering funk. And finally, we'll explore the dry spices and the fascinating modern pantry shortcuts that are actively changing how the world cooks today.
So we're building a house. And every great structure absolutely needs a foundation. I mean, you don't build the roof first.
If you try, it just collapses.
Exactly, it collapses. In Chinese cooking, before any protein, before any leafy green ever even thinks about touching the pan, the flavor base has to be established.
It is the mandatory first step. I mean, without it, the dish has no soul.
And this foundation relies entirely on fresh botanicals. They are known as the three gods, or the three treasures.
The golden trio.
The golden trio. We were talking about scallions, ginger, and garlic.
And what's crucial to understand here is that these fresh botanicals are doing some incredibly heavy lifting.
Yeah.
In a lot of Western cooking, you might throw in some garlic at the end just to add flavor. It's an accessory.
Like an afterthought.
Right, an afterthought. But here, the golden trio is strictly functional. They actively neutralize harsh, gamey odors in meats. They unlock deep, complex aromas.
Wow.
And they completely define the physical character of almost every dish you will ever encounter in this cuisine.
Let's actually break them down one by one, because it's not as simple as just grabbing whatever's on the shelf. Let's start with scallions, or green onions.
Okay, scallions.
Their core job is to cleanse gamey flavors, inject a really fresh, grassy fragrance, and provide a bright pop of visual color. But what completely blew my mind in our research is the geographical divide here.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. It is not just, go buy a green onion.
Yep.
There is a strict climate-driven geography to this.
It's a very distinct geography, yeah. And it's dictated by both agriculture and culinary necessity. Let's look at the north.
Okay.
Northern chefs heavily favor what is called Cong. These are massive, incredibly robust green onions.
I've seen these in markets. They look like leeks on steroids. They're huge.
Yeah. They really are. They are structurally very dense. And there's a reason for that. Northern Chinese cuisine, think Beijing or Shandong, often features incredibly high heat stir fries.
Right.
Heavy thermal energy and very hearty, fatty meat dishes. Mutton, beef, thick cuts of pork.
Right, because historically it's a colder climate. You need heavy, warming food.
Exactly. So you need an aromatic botanical that can stand up to that intense heat and that heavy protein without just instantly disintegrating into a burnt, bitter ash.
That makes total sense.
The Cong has thick cell walls. It provides that necessary structural integrity and a very bold, sharp flavor that can actually cut through animal fat.
But then you travel south down to Guangdong or Jiangsu?
Down south, the climate is temperate, the ingredients are more delicate, and the cooking leans much more towards Xiao, which are small, slender scallions.
They're much thinner.
Yeah, very thin. They have a very subtle sweetness and a much higher water content.
So if you took that delicate southern Xiao and threw it into a 600-degree northern wok with a pound of mutton...
Oh, it would vaporize.
Literally vaporize.
It would burn instantly and completely ruin the dish. Instead, their delicate nature makes them perfect for gentle applications. You scatter them over cold salads, or you let them gently float in delicate, clear seafood soups where their subtle sweetness can actually be perceived.
It's all about matching the physical intensity of the aromatic to the thermal intensity of the cooking method. And speaking of cooking methods, there are two totally opposite ways to use these scallions.
Right, the timing is everything.
There's the scallion blast Cong Guo, which is tossing them into a scorching wok at the absolute beginning. Or you do the exact opposite. You scatter them completely raw over a finished dish right before it hits the table.
It highlights how one ingredient serves two entirely different chemical purposes.
How so?
Well, the Cong Guo application extracts and transforms the essential oils through extreme heat, permanently embedding the flavor into the cooking oil.
Okay.
The raw application, however, relies on the sharp, fresh bite of the undenatured plant cells to cut through the richness of the finished dish right as you eat it.
Okay, let's move to the second god, ginger. Now, I need you to help me out here. I understand that ginger neutralizes fishy notes and cuts through heavy meats.
It's central for that, yes.
But there's this underlying culinary philosophy that ginger is used to balance the cold properties of ingredients with its natural warmth. Wait, let me stop you right there. What does that actually mean?
It's a great question.
Because a steamed fish sitting on my plate is physically hot. It's steaming. Are we talking about traditional Chinese medicine here? Or is there a verifiable culinary chemistry reason we pair ginger with fish?
It's actually a fascinating intersection of both. Yes, traditional Chinese culinary philosophy categorizes ingredients by their energetic properties, yin and yang, cooling and warming.
Okay.
Seafood, crustaceans, and certain vegetables are considered energetically cold, meaning they are believed to cool the body down. Ginger is inherently warm, so philosophically you pair them to create harmony in the body.
Okay, I get the philosophy. But what about the chemistry? I need the science.
Oh, the science perfectly backs up the philosophy. Seafood often contains volatile compounds, like amines, which give off that distinct fishy ocean smell.
Right, that smell that nobody wants in their kitchen.
Exactly. Well, ginger contains powerful chemical compounds called Gingerols and Shojols. When you introduce ginger to seafood under heat, these compounds physically bind with the amines in the fish and neutralize them.
No way. They physically bind together.
Yes. So while ancient chefs thought they were balancing cold energy with warm energy, modern chemistry shows us they were actively neutralizing off-putting alkaline compounds with botanical acids and oils.
That is incredible. They mapped out complex molecular chemistry using the language of energy and temperature. But I need to push for more clarity here because ginger isn't just ginger.
Not at all.
Our research outlines 3 completely different life stages of ginger, and I want to make sure you and I and the listener really grasp the mechanics of this. We have Shenjiang, Laojiang, and Zhejiang.
The 3 ages.
Yeah. If I go to the supermarket right now, what am I actually buying, and what is the difference in how they function?
Well, if you go to a standard Western supermarket, you are almost certainly buying Shenjiang, which is young, everyday ginger. The differences all come down to age, water content, and the development of the fibrous matrix.
So Xinjiang is kind of the middle ground.
Yes, exactly. It is juicy, it is relatively mild in its heat, and the internal fibers haven't fully toughened into wood yet.
Okay.
Because it is tender and holds a lot of moisture, it is perfect for fine slicing or julienning directly into quick stir fries. When you bite into it in a finished dish, it releases its flavor easily without leaving a woody, stringy texture in your mouth.
Okay, so Xinjiang is for the quick woke action. What about the old stuff? Laojiang.
Laojiang. As a ginger stays in the ground longer, it loses moisture. It becomes incredibly fibrous, woody, and intensely pungent. The gingerols really concentrate.
So it's super strong.
Very strong. You would never want to bite into a slice of this in a stir fry. I mean, it would literally be like chewing on a piece of twine.
So why use it at all if it's like twine?
Because that concentrated flavor and robust physical structure make it perfectly engineered for marathon cooking. It is built for long simmered soups and braises.
I see.
A piece of Laojiang can sit in a bubbling pot of pork bone broth for 4 hours, slowly, steadily releasing a deep warmth into the liquid without ever disintegrating or turning to mush.
That makes total sense. The young, juicy stuff for the quick flash of heat, the old tough stuff for the slow extraction. And then there's the baby, Zhejiang.
Harvested very early in the season, it usually has pink tips. It is exceptionally crisp, extremely tender, and very mild. It has almost no tough fibers at all.
Because it hasn't had time to develop them, right?
Exactly. Because of that texture, you can actually eat it in much larger pieces. It's ideal for quick meat sautés, where it almost acts as a crunchy vegetable itself rather than just a background aromatic.
Wow, a vegetable ginger.
Yeah. Or, crucially, it is used for pickling. When you have pickled ginger at a sushi restaurant, for example, that delicate texture relies entirely on the tenderness of baby ginger.
It really highlights how a single botanical can play 3 entirely different structural roles based solely on when it is pulled from the dirt. Which brings us to the final member of the golden trio, garlic.
The sharpest, most aggressive of the 3.
Definitely. Historically, it was heavily relied upon as a natural antimicrobial, which makes complete sense before the invention of refrigeration.
It was essential for food safety.
Right. But purely from a culinary perspective, its job is to sharpen savory flavors and slice right through heavy grease. But again, just like the scallions, it is not just, buy a head of garlic.
The everyday workhorse is the standard multi-clove garlic we are all familiar with. But when you look at highly specialized Chinese pantries, you find the single bulb solo garlic.
I always found solo garlic fascinating. It's just one solid round pearl.
Botanically, it's a variation where the plant doesn't split its energy into multiple cloves. Because all the plant's resources remain in that one single sphere, a solo garlic bulb offers an even more concentrated, intense bite.
So it's just pure power.
Pure power. It is pure, undivided allicin, the compound that gives garlic its heat. And beyond the bulb itself, the Chinese pantry wastes nothing.
No, they don't.
They fully utilize the tender green garlic sprouts and the sturdy garlic stems, stir-frying them directly as standalone vegetables.
I've actually had garlic stems stir-fried with cured pork, and it's incredible. It has the sweetness of a vegetable, but the aromatic echo of garlic.
It's a wonderful dish.
Okay, so we have these 3 incredible tools.
Yeah.
But how do we actually deploy this golden trio? This brings us to the defining signature of a Chinese stir-fry, Qiang Guo, or wok aromatics.
This is the critical moment of transformation in the kitchen. It is where the cooking actually begins.
I want the listener to picture their own kitchen for a second. To me, Qiang Guo is basically like dropping a bath bomb into water, but with far higher stakes and much more danger.
That's a great way to put it.
You have shimmering, smoking hot oil in a carbon steel wok. It's sitting at maybe 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you drop this finely chopped trio, the scallions, the ginger, the garlic, directly into that oil.
And instantly it erupts.
Yes, it violently bettles, it hisses, and it is a localized explosion of aroma. But why is the fat the critical part of that equation? Why can't we just dry roast them?
It all comes down to the solubility of flavor. The compounds that make ginger taste like ginger and garlic taste like garlic are volatile essential oils locked inside the plant's cell walls.
Right.
When you flash fry these finely chopped aromatics in that incredibly hot oil, the rapid expansion of water inside the plant cells causes them to violently rupture. That's the hissing and popping you hear.
The water is turning to steam and blowing the cell doors off their hinges.
Precisely. And because these flavor compounds are essential oils, they are lipophilic, they love fat, and they dissolve directly into it. You are essentially infusing the cooking oil in real time in a matter of seconds.
So when you subsequently add your chicken or your tofu or your snap peas into the wok, they aren't just cooking in plain neutral canola oil.
No, not at all. They're being seared in a highly charged aromatic foundation that actively perfumes every single fiber of the finished dish. This is why Qiang Guo is a high wire act. If the oil isn't hot enough, the cells don't rupture properly, and you just get greasy boiled garlic.
Yes.
And if you leave them in for 3 seconds too long, the garlic burns, the ginger turns bitter, and the entire dish is permanently ruined before the protein even hits the pan.
It is the absolute bedrock. So we have just created this incredibly violent, volatile explosion in the wok. The oil is supercharged with flavor, but the heat is still climbing.
Rapidly climbing.
Right. If we don't intervene, those delicate aromatics are going to burn to ash in seconds. The wok demands liquid to drop the temperature, halt the browning, and build the body of the dish. And that brings us to the liquid architecture of the pantry.
The liquids are what give the dish its volume, its defining visual color, and its sharp sensory boundaries. They cool the wok and create the sauce.
And when we talk about liquids, we have to start with the absolute soul, the undisputed king of the Chinese kitchen, soy sauce. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking about the bottle of soy sauce sitting in your fridge door right now, I want you to go check it later. Is it light or is it dark?
It's a crucial distinction.
Because I think a lot of people, especially in the West, view soy sauce as a monolith. You go to a restaurant, there's a bottle with a red cap on the table, and that is just soy sauce. But it is actually a highly specialized dual tool system.
It is a massive misconception. If you treat all soy sauce as interchangeable, you will never replicate restaurant-quality Chinese food. The pantry universally splits soy sauce into two distinct categories: light soy sauce and dark soy sauce.
Okay, let's build an analogy here. Think of light soy sauce as your salt. It is thinner in viscosity, yes, but it delivers a very sharp, direct hit of salty umami.
Exactly.
It contains the raw amino acids that penetrate the ingredients to season them from the inside out. But dark soy sauce, that is your paintbrush.
I love the paintbrush analogy. Dark soy sauce is fundamentally different on a chemical level. It has been fermented and aged much longer, and crucially, it often has molasses or caramel added to it during the final stages.
Oh, caramel.
Yes. As a result, it is viscous, it is noticeably sweeter, and its primary function is absolutely not to add saltiness.
So if you try to salt your food with dark soy sauce, you are going to completely ruin it.
You'll end up with a dish that is cloyingly sweet and pitch black. The purpose of dark soy sauce is to coat the exterior of the ingredients. It provides that rich, lacquered mahogany color we associate with iconic dishes like red braised pork or a classic stir-fried noodle.
It looks so good.
It does. It's basically a shortcut to the Maillard reaction, that deep, savory browning that makes food look appetizing.
So if you've been trying to get that rich, dark glaze on your stir-fry at home using the light soy sauce from your fridge door, you've essentially been trying to paint a house with salt water. It's never going to work.
Exactly. A master cook manipulates these two sauces in tandem. They will splash in the light soy to dial in the base seasoning and the sharp umami, rapidly cooling the woke aromatics we just discussed.
Cooling the what?
Then, right at the end of the cooking process, they will bring in a carefully measured splash of dark soy to paint the dish, giving it that glossy, appetizing finish.
It is a delicate balancing act. And speaking of balance, the wok is now rich with oil, umami, and salt. It's getting heavy. We need to introduce the other massive pillar of liquid architecture, vinegar.
The great balancer.
Our research outlines vinegar as a vital tool for two very specific physiological reasons: cutting through heavy grease and waking up the appetite.
From a physiological standpoint, fat coats the palate. If you eat a heavy, oily stir-fry, your taste buds get smothered, leading to palate fatigue.
You just get tired of eating it.
Right. The food starts to taste dull. Acetic acid vinegar literally strips that fat away, cleansing the palate and triggering a salivary response that makes you want to keep eating.
But again, just like the scallions, we are not just talking about generic white vinegar here. There's a massive, incredibly detailed geographical map to this. The Chinese culinary world recognizes the four giants of vinegar, and they are radically different.
They really are.
Let's take a tour.
Let's start in the north with the deeply robust Shaanxi aged vinegar. Shaanxi province has a harsh climate, and they rely heavily on grains like sorghum.
Okay.
Their vinegar is famous for its dark color, its thick, almost syrupy consistency, and its complex, smoky depth. Some of it is aged in the sun during summer and left to freeze in the winter, which concentrates the flavors intensely. It smells almost like a dark, stout beer.
Wow, a stout beer. It's heavy artillery then. It can stand up to hearty dumplings and rich, thick noodle dishes without getting lost.
Exactly. But then you travel down to the eastern seaboard, to Jiangsu province, and you find Zhenjiang aromatic vinegar.
This is the one most people might recognize if they've had soup dumplings, right?
Yes, that's the one. Zhenjiang vinegar is typically made from glutinous rice. It is much fruitier, slightly sweeter, and far more delicate than the Shaanxi variety.
It has a totally different vibe.
It does. It has notes of plum and dark sugar. It is the classic pairing for xiaolongbao, where you want an aromatic, acidic lift that cuts the fat of the pork filling, but you don't want to obliterate the delicate flavor of the broth.
Okay, what about the West? Sichuan province.
In Sichuan, you have the fascinating boning vinegar. What makes boning unique is that the fermentation starter incorporates over 60 traditional Chinese medicinal herbs.
60 herbs.
Over 60, yes. It gives the vinegar a very distinct, earthy, complex, almost medicinal profile. It's made from wheat bran and is completely vital to authentic Sichuan dishes like fish fragrant eggplant, where it balances the fiery chilies.
And finally, the Fujian red rice vinegar on the southeast coast.
This one is visually stunning. It uses red yeast rice in the fermentation process, which gives it a striking crimson color.
Red vinegar.
Yes. It has a tart, slightly sweet flavor profile that is completely distinct from the dark green vinegars of the north, and it pairs beautifully with the abundant seafood of the Fujian coastline.
So, listener, I want you to pause and imagine this for a second. Picture a simple hot wok in your kitchen. You've got some slivered pork and cabbage cooking.
A classic combination.
If you finish that wok with a splash of the robust, smoky, Shaanxi-aged vinegar, you are eating a heavy, hearty, rustic winter dish. But if you take that exact same wok, same pork, same cabbage, and instead you splash in the fruitier, sweeter Zhenjiang aromatic vinegar,
it's completely different.
you have completely altered the DNA of the dish. Becomes lighter, brighter, more coastal. The liquid architecture dictates the entire sensory experience.
It changes the entire feel of the room, so to speak. And of course, anchoring all of this liquid architecture, we must briefly touch on the great baseline equalizer, table salt.
Because even with all the complex soy sauces and vinegars, plain table salt is the fundamental baseline of flavor.
It is the foundation of the foundation. And even here, the sourcing is geographically diverse.
Oh, really?
Oh, definitely. Depending on where you are in China, your salt might be harvested from coastal seawater, extracted from massive inland salt lakes in the northwest, or, and this is incredible historical engineering mind, from ancient deep mineral wells in places like Zigong in Sichuan.
wells.
Yes, where they used bamboo pipes to drill thousands of feet into the earth centuries ago. The chemical source of the sodium changes, but its role as the ultimate flavor enhancer remains constant.
Okay, let's take stock of our pantry build so far. We started with the explosive, fresh aromas of the Qiang Guo foundation. Our ginger, garlic, and scallions opening up the wort.
The explosive start.
We have raised the liquid walls and established our regional boundaries using the dual-threat soy sauces and our giant complex vinegars. We have a good dish. But if you want to get to that next level,
A restaurant level.
right, that deep, complex restaurant quality profile that just lingers on the back of your palate for an hour after you eat, you need something more. You need time. You need the funk.
You cannot fake the funk. And you only get that through the slow magic of fermentation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. When you casually describe the concept of fermented, funky beans to someone who hasn't grown up with it, it doesn't sound inherently appetizing.
I know, it sounds a bit alarming.
We are basically talking about taking protein-rich legumes, introducing microbial molds, and letting them sit in jars until they break down. Can you explain the actual biological magic here? Why is this controlled rot turning into absolute flavor gold instead of just spoiling?
It is the literal alchemy of umami. And it all comes down to enzymatic hydrolysis.
Okay, break that down for me. Enzymatic hydrolysis.
When you take a highly protein-rich ingredient like a soybean or a broad bean, the proteins inside are essentially long, coiled chains of amino acids. On their own, our taste buds can't really register them. They just taste like plain beans.
All right, beans are bland.
But when you introduce specific, safe molds and bacteria and manage the environment with heavy salt to prevent harmful rot, those microbes go to work. They release enzymes that act like microscopic scissors.
Microscopic scissors, I like that.
They start chalking up those long, flavorless protein chains into individual free amino acids. And the most prominent amino acid produced in this process is glutamic acid.
Wait, glutamic acid, that sounds familiar.
It should. Glutamic acid is the exact chemical that fits like a lock and key into the umami receptors on the human tongue. It is the chemical basis for that deeply savory, meaty, mouth-filling sensation we crave.
Oh, wow.
So you aren't eating rotten beans. You are utilizing highly concentrated, time-intensified flavor bombs. Fermented pastes bridge the gap between simple surface heating and truly deep internal flavor.
That makes so much sense. It's essentially pre-digesting the proteins to unlock the savory cheat code. And our research highlights two massive heavyweights in this fermented category: spicy broad bean paste and smooth sweet bean sauce.
Two titans of the pantry.
And geographically and chemically, they are complete opposites.
They represent two entirely different culinary philosophies. On one hand, you have the spicy broad bean paste. The undisputed king here is the legendary Qiang Guo from Sichuan.
The fiery soul of the Southwest.
Yes, this is made by taking broad beans, inoculating them, and mixing them with copious amounts of salt and fiery Xiao chilies.
Lots of chilies.
The mixture is placed in massive clay crocks and aged outside in the sun, sometimes for up to 3 years. Every day, workers manually stir the crocks to expose the paste to the humid Sichuan air and sunlight, deepening the fermentation.
That sounds incredibly labor-intensive. Manually stirring crocks every day for years.
It is an artisanal masterpiece. When you slow fry a spoonful of Qiang Guo in oil, it turns the oil a brilliant deep red and releases an intensely savory, spicy, earthy aroma.
My mouth is watering just thinking about it.
Think of mapo tofu, or the bubbling broth of an authentic Sichuan hot pot. That aggressive, bold flavor profile comes directly from this fermented paste. It is designed to make you sweat in a humid climate.
But conversely, you travel north, and you have the sweet bean sauce, Tamianjiang.
A completely different beast. This sauce doesn't rely on fiery chilies at all. In fact, it's often made primarily from fermented wheat flour and soybeans.
Wheat flour.
Yeah. The fermentation process in the cooler northern climate is carefully managed to break down the starches into simple sugars, producing a rich, savory, sweet flavor profile.
This is the dark, glossy, almost jam-like glaze that is absolutely central to northern Chinese classics. If you've ever had Peking duck and you spread that dark sauce on the little delicate pancake before adding the duck skin and the scallions, that is sweet bean sauce.
The perfect accompaniment.
It provides a luxurious, mellow, sweet depth rather than an aggressive, spicy punch.
It is amazing how the exact same core concept, fermenting a legume or grain, can branch out into the fiery, sweating soul of the Southwest and the luxurious, sweet glaze of the North.
We can't talk about fermented beans without talking about duchi. Fermented black beans.
A staple of Southern cooking, particularly Cantonese.
These are salt-cured fermented black soybeans. But unlike the paste we just talked about, duchis are fascinating because they are often used whole or just roughly chopped.
Right. They aren't meant to completely dissolve into a smooth sauce. They are textural.
Like little flavor bombs.
Exactly. When they are scattered through a dish, they provide these little, intense, salty, savory landmines.
Yeah.
When you bite into one, it's an explosion of umami. They are the star ingredient in rustic, everyday, home stir-fries like bitter melon with black bean sauce. But they're also essential and highly refined dim sum dishes.
Like the steamed pork ribs. If you go to a dim sum cart, you see those little tender nuggets of pork coated in a light sauce with tiny black flecks everywhere.
Yes, those black flecks are duchi.
That is the duchi working its magic. The enzymes in the black beans actually help tenderize the pork while it steams, infusing it with that deep, salty funk. Now, let's look at another fermented product that completely blew my mind. Furu. Fermented bean curd.
Ah, furo. If we connect this to the bigger picture of global cuisine, furo is often perfectly described as Eastern cheese.
Because it is literally preserved tofu. It's soy milk curdled into blocks, just like dairy milk is curdled into cheese.
Exactly. Cubes of firm tofu are introduced to a specific mold, often a mu-core mold, and allowed to grow a white, fluffy mycelium, much like the rind of a brie cheese.
A brie cheese rind on tofu. Wow.
Then, those cubes are submerged in a brine of salt, rice wine, and various spices to ferment for months. The mold's enzymes break down the rigid proteins of the tofu, transforming the internal texture into something incredibly velvety, creamy, and spreadable.
It's basically a ripe camembert or a soft blue cheese, but made from soy. And there are varieties, right?
Several. You have red furu, which gets its distinctive burgundy color from red yeast rice and tends to be slightly sweeter and highly aromatic.
Okay.
You have white furu, which is more straightforwardly savory, salty, and pungent. And then you have the notorious green variety, which is essentially stinky tofu. It has a powerful ammonia-like pungency that fans absolutely adore, similar to an intense Roquefort.
But how are people actually using this Eastern cheese in the kitchen? Because I can't imagine just tossing a whole cube of pungent green tofu into a stir fry.
It is incredibly versatile. On a humble, everyday level, it is often enjoyed straight. You take just a tiny, salty smear of it on the end of your chopstick and eat it with a bowl of plain, soothing rice congee for breakfast.
Oh, that sounds so comforting.
The contrast between the bland porridge and the intense, creamy furu is perfect.
But culinary-wise, it's a secret weapon for braising, isn't it?
Absolutely. A chef will take a couple of cubes of red furu, mash them into a paste with some of the soaking wine, and melt that into the braising liquid for pork belly or spare ribs.
That sounds amazing.
It adds an astonishing layer of savory, creamy depth that you simply cannot achieve with soy sauce or salt alone. It thickens the sauce and adds a lingering, rich finish. It is also fantastic when mashed with garlic to stir-fry robust, hollow greens like water spinach, coating the leaves in umami.
So we have our fermented umami concentrates building this incredible lingering depth. But we need to cover a couple of sleek, highly specialized liquids that act as finishing touches in this section. First, oyster sauce.
A relatively modern invention, historically speaking, but an absolute staple of Cantonese cooking.
It was supposedly invented by accident, right? When someone left a pot of oyster soup boiling for too long and it reduced down into a thick brown paste. Today, it's crafted from rich, caramelized oyster extracts. It is a thick, viscous, savory sweet sauce.
It acts almost like a shortcut to deep flavor because the oysters have already done the heavy lifting. The proteins in the oysters have already gone through the Maillard reaction during the reduction process.
Right.
It is less about slow-building depth in a braise and more about providing an immediate, glossy, savory sweet coating. It is the absolute perfect finish for crisp, blanched vegetables like Chinese broccoli.
And then there's the liquid that acts as the great purifier, cooking wine, specifically Sheng wine.
This is a foundational element for preparing proteins.
We talked earlier about ginger neutralizing fishy odors, but the source material says Sheng rice wine is the absolute gold standard across Chinese kitchens for drawing out unwanted raw odors from meat and seafood. How is this different from ginger?
It's a different chemical mechanism entirely.
Yeah.
When you are prepping a raw meat, poultry, or fish, there are naturally occurring volatile compounds present. In fish, it's often trimethylamine, which smells awful.
Super fishy.
When you marinate that protein in Sheng wine, or when a chef dramatically splashes the wine around the superheated edge of a wok during a stir fry, a specific reaction occurs.
The alcohol bonds with the bad stuff.
Precisely. The ethanol in the wine chemically bonds with those undesirable odor compounds. And because alcohol evaporates at a lower temperature than water, as the intense heat of the wok hits the wine, it rapidly vaporizes.
It literally carries the smell away.
It literally carries those bad odor molecules away with it into the air, evaporating them out of the dish entirely. It is an active chemical cleansing process.
It is literally taking the trash out on a molecular level. It strips away the funk you don't want so the fermented funk you do want can shine. I love that.
It's a beautiful system.
Okay, let's look at the blueprint. We have built the blazing wok foundation with our ginger and garlic. We've raised the structural walls and cooled the pan with our liquid soy sauce, which translates to these rich, slow-braised master stocks. We are talking about whole, dried spices like star anise, cinnamon bark, cloves, and fennel.
These are the spices that permeate those dark, bubbling pots of master broth that sit on the stoves of noodle shops for years, continuously replenished.
Years.
Oh, yeah. The whole spices undergo a slow, osmotic exchange over hours and hours, infusing meats with a deeply fragrant, almost medicinal, warming aroma.
But among all the dry spices in the massive Chinese repertoire, one stands completely alone. It is totally unique.
The vibrantly red, beautifully floral Sichuan Peppercorn. Huajiao.
Okay, I have to stop and give an analogy here for anyone who hasn't actually experienced this ingredient because the naming is terrible.
It's very misleading.
A lot of people hear the word peppercorn and they immediately think of black pepper on their dining table. Or they hear Sichuan and they think of chili pepper heat. But the Sichuan peppercorn is neither of those things. It is actually the dried husk of a citrus relative. And eating a good quality Sichuan peppercorn is exactly like licking a tiny 9-volt battery.
That is a very visceral and chemically accurate description.
It creates an electric, vibrating feeling on your lips and your tongue. It is known as ma, or numbing, but it's a tactile sensation, not a thermal burn like a jalapeno. So why does a piece of dried fruit make my mouth feel like it's vibrating?
It comes down to a remarkable chemical compound called hydroxyalpha-santal.
Hydroxyalpha-santal.
Unlike capsaicin in chili peppers, which tricks your brain into thinking your mouth is physically on fire by activating heat receptors, the sansol in the Sichuan peppercorn targets the somatosensory system.
The touch receptors.
Exactly. It activates the exact same nerve receptors in your lips and tongue that respond to light touch and vibration. It causes those nerves to fire rapidly, sending a signal to your brain that registers as a buzzing, tingling, numbing frequency.
That is wild.
It is an illusion of touch, and when you combine that vibrating moss sensation with the fiery thermal lahit of dried red chilies, you get mala numbing and spicy.
Mala is the defining, intoxicating flavor profile of southwestern Chinese cooking.
It's a brilliant culinary trick. The numbing effect of the peppercorn actually slightly dulls the pain of the chili heat, allowing you to eat more chilies and taste the complex, fruity flavors of the pepper without just crying from the pain. It alters how you physically experience the food in your mouth.
It is mind-blowing food science discovered centuries ago. And after the electric spices, we have the final polish, the absolute last thing to hit the dish before it leaves the kitchen. Toasted sesame oil.
This is a crucial point of technique that many home cooks get wrong. Beyond standard cooking fats like rapeseed, soybean, or peanut oil, toasted sesame oil must be treated strictly as a finishing touch.
I will admit a humiliating failure here. Years ago, I tried to make a stir fry, and I thought, I love sesame oil, I'll just use it to fry my chicken. I poured a quarter cup into a hot wok. It smoked instantly. The chicken turned black, and the whole kitchen smelled like burnt rubber tires.
Oh no.
Had to throw the pan away.
Because you fundamentally misunderstood the chemistry of the oil. Toasted sesame oil is made from seeds that have already been roasted. The flavor compounds the pyrazines that give it that incredible nutty aroma are highly volatile.
Right.
And the oil itself has an incredibly low smoke point. If you use it as a cooking fat in a 500-degree high heat wok, you instantly burn those delicate compounds, destroying the nutty flavor and turning it acrid and bitter.
It's a perfume, not a cooking medium.
Precisely. It is drizzled at the very last second, mere drops of it, over cold appetizers like smashed cucumber salad, or floated on top of hot soups just as they're taken off the heat. The goal is to lock in that unmistakable nutty aroma. So it is the very first volatile compound that hits your nose when the bowl is set in front of you.
So we have walked through this incredibly detailed, highly specific, geographically diverse pantry. We have seen how complex the rules of the architecture are. You need the right scallion for the right heat, the right vinegar for the right region, the right age of ginger, the right mold on your bean curd.
It's a lot to manage.
But let's face reality. Keeping a home pantry stocked with 3 ages of ginger, 4 regional vinegars, and multiple crocks of fermented pastes takes time, money, space, and deep generational knowledge.
It requires a massive commitment to the craft of traditional cooking. And the modern world, with its urbanization and fast-paced lifestyles, doesn't always allow for that.
So we are seeing what I would call the ultimate democratization of flavor. The culinary architecture is being prepackaged. And this really started decades ago with a phenomenon called 13 spices, or Sheng.
This was a legendary development in the modern Chinese household. The innovator here was the Wang Shui brand. What they did was look at the incredibly complex matrix of traditional dried aromatics used in those Lu Kai Master stocks.
The anise, the cinnamon, all of that.
Exactly. The star anise, the cinnamon, the cloves, the fennel, the Sichuan peppercorns, the sand ginger, and many others.
Balancing 15 whole barks and pods is hard. If you use too much clove, you ruin the dish.
Exactly. So Wang Shui formulated a perfectly balanced, compressed, powdered version of that exact flavor profile into a single, foolproof, inexpensive paper box.
So instead of a busy home cook needing a massive spice cabinet, they just reached for this one box.
It democratized access to complex, restaurant-level flavor profiles. A single spoonful of 13 spices instantly elevates a simple Tuesday night pork braise or a weekend dumpling filling with absolute zero guesswork.
But the innovation didn't stop at dry powders. We are now in the era of what the industry calls modern composite seasonings.
This represents a massive paradigm shift in how people cook on a daily basis globally.
We are talking about ready-made, wet flavor packets. Brands like Li Kum Ki, Haoranjia, and Heidilao are taking incredibly complex, highly regional recipes and standardizing them.
It's incredible what they've done.
If you want to make an authentic Sichuan hot pot base, you used to need to render beef tallow, slowly fry pixing de banjiang, balance 20 spices, and manage the heat for hours. Now, You buy a foil pouch at the supermarket, tear it open, and drop it in boiling water.
They are doing the same for dishes like sour cabbage fish or mapo tofu. The wet pastes, the infused oils, the fermented notes, they're all perfectly balanced and stabilized in a packet.
It's food science bridging the gap to tradition. But this raises a massive philosophical question.
It does. On one hand, these composite seasonings are a marvel of accessibility. They allow a college student in Beijing or a busy parent in New York who has never touched a wok to execute a multi-layered, highly authentic regional flavor profile in their own kitchen in 20 minutes.
Right.
Flavors that previously required an immense, perfectly curated pantry and years of technique are now universally available.
It's beautiful. Anyone can access the magic.
Yes. But on the other hand, we must critically ask what is lost in that standardization. When a grandmother builds a dish from the ground up, starting with the exact regional variety of scallion she bought at her local market, splashed with the specific local vinegar from her province, and deepened with a batch of fermented bean paste her family has used for 3 generations, that dish has a unique, hyper-local soul.
It's personal.
It is a reflection of the specific cook, their immediate environment, and their microclimate.
A standardized packet from a massive factory, no matter how delicious, will always taste exactly the same, whether you open it in Shanghai, London, or Texas. The human variance, the slight imperfections, the local terroir that gets erased.
It is the tension between preserving the soul of a craft and allowing the masses to enjoy the results of it.
So what does this all mean for us? We started this deep dive looking at a mountain, right? The intimidating, chaotic complexity of a Chinese restaurant menu. But I hope you can see now that we have the blueprint. We have seen how a dish is a carefully constructed symphony, built in logical stages.
It is arguably one of the most structured culinary systems on the planet.
It starts from the raw, explosive energy of the Qiang Guo, the ginger, garlic, and scallions rupturing their essential oils into the hot fat. It builds upward, cooled and defined by the sharp boundaries of regional vinegars and the dual-threat umami of light and dark soy sauce.
The liquid walls.
It deepens its soul through time with the enzymatic, savory power of fermented bean pastes and Eastern cheese. And it finishes with the electric, vibrating touch of the Sichuan Peppercorn and the delicate, volatile perfume of toasted sesame oil.
Once you know the building blocks, you can taste the construction of the entire dish. You move from eating blindly to eating with deep comprehension.
So the next time you sit down and eat one of these incredible dishes, whether you are at a high-end banquet or just grabbing takeout from your local spot, I want you to mentally deconstruct the layers as you chew. Try to identify the sharp foundational bite of the 3 gods.
Try to spot the ginger and garlic.
Ask yourself if you can taste the dark, robust, smoky vinegar of the north or the fruity, delicate vinegar of the east. Wait for the lingering, savory funk of the fermented soybeans to coat the back of your palate, and see if you can feel the electric maw of the peppercorn buzzing on your lips.
The magic isn't actually magic. The magic is in the architecture.
It's about respecting the process and understanding the why behind the flavors. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on what we just discussed about those modern flavor packets.
A provocative thought.
If these incredibly efficient, perfectly engineered composite seasoning packets from major food brands are standardizing these wildly complex, highly regional flavor profiles for the sake of global accessibility, do we eventually lose the deeply hyper-local soul of the Chinese pantry?
It's a tough question.
When the messy, human variance of choosing a specific vinegar and a specific age of ginger is replaced by a standardized foil pouch, does the culinary art form suffer? Or is this simply the ultimate beautiful evolution of a tradition, allowing anyone, anywhere, to finally master the magic of the wok?
It is a profound shift in how a culture sustains and exports its flavors to the world. There is no easy answer.
Something to think about the next time you tear open a packet or chop a clove of solo garlic. Until next time, keep exploring.